Welcome to Adventures in Life. I'm Earl Beecher, your host. In case you were wondering what that figure was that you saw on the screen with the credits, it was the seal of the Treasurer of the state of California. And I'm very happy to say that our guest is Matt Fong, the Treasurer of the state of California. Matt, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Earl.
Just exactly what is the role of the Treasurer of the state? I've heard of other offices, similar names, Controller and so forth. Could you explain that for us?
Now, the Treasurer is the banker for the state. There are actually three functions that handle money in our state. The Board of Equalization, which I happen to be a member and vice chairman of before this job. The Board of Equalization collects taxes for the state, about 17, 18 different programs, from sales tax to gasoline tax, alcohol tax, about $2, $3 billion a month. And then they take this money and give it to me as the treasurer, and to invest this money and to invest it in the short term until the money has to be spent. When it has to be spent, the controller sends me a note. I ship her the money, wire her the money, and then she pays the bill. She has the checkbook.
So the controller has the checkbook, she signs the checks, but you're the one who give her the money to do it with.
I have a basic...
What do you invest it in?
Well, it's in short-term, high-quality, low-risk paper. I have about a $28 billion portfolio, so for most Californians, I've invested anywhere from about $200 million to about $1.2 billion every morning before the average person has their first cup of coffee. It's between 7 and 8 o'clock every morning. For that, we've returned...
You seem cool, calm, and collected. I think I'd be a nervous wreck trying to figure out what to do with all of that every morning.
You know, my staff does an outstanding job. Now, this is the part that Bob Citron in Orange County got it all fouled up, where he lost $1.7 billion for doing this. He took a lot of risk. We don't.
Okay.
So that's one responsibility. The second is, anytime voters pass bonds to build, whether it's a school or a hospital or a prison, whatever, I'm the one who represents the state to Wall Street and sell it. We're the largest seller and issuer of bonds in the world, anywhere from $3 to $4 to $8 billion a year. So that keeps me busy as well.
Do you still use the sealed envelope method for selling bonds?
We do, on a competitive bid basis, yes we do.
Is that every Thursday morning? I know it used to be.
Well, we're getting to be that busy now. The market is moving in our direction, and we're refunding a lot of bonds, like most people do when they're refinancing their home. I saved taxpayers about $6 million last Monday by taking advantage of a little dip in the market and refinancing like your home.
Yeah.
So saving on interest.
So you said refunding.
Or refinancing.
Would you explain?
Refinancing.
It's the same thing.
Same thing. You know, as over a 30-year life of a bond, you have a certain interest rate, and if the interest rates go down, just like you would if you own a home mortgage. You can
pay off the old bond that has a higher rate by issuing a new bond that has a lower rate.
That's right.
And save the taxpayers some money.
A lot of money. $6 million buys a lot of computers for kids in schools.
Yes, it would.
Mm-hmm.
Is that where the money goes?
Well, it goes into education, half of it, and the other half goes into...
Education is the biggest expense in the state, isn't it?
It is. About 52 to 54 cents of every tax dollar goes to education. I support education. I think that, not that just because my kids are in public school in Hacienda Heights, but I think that California, one of our greatest assets is our educational system. And you take a look at the future of Californian industries. They're all knowledge-based, computer, high-tech, biotech. Even entertainment is very knowledge-oriented. Even if you're driving a UPS truck, if you've been in their vans lately, they all have computers. So California has to continue investing in education.
You know, you're talking dear to my heart because I was in the education system. In fact, the reason I moved to California was I was accepted at UCLA and got into the education down here under the GI Bill, of course.
Yes.
And then I've taught for years in the Cal State system. And we have possibly the greatest system in the nation.
But we have to keep investing in it. It's not something that you can just take advantage of. And we've had education bonds that were passed by voters in March, which I'm now taking to the market. $2 billion of it, we've already have about $1.6 billion used to construct and rebuild old buildings and to add new buildings. Now we're sending money to lower class sizes in kindergarten to third grade. All good things that will give us benefits 10 years, 20 years down the line.
How much of this is going toward technology things, the computers and so forth? Because I know they're using computers even in the kindergarten at the elementary school where my grandchildren go.
Yes, well, I don't know the breakdown, Earl, as far as what they use the money for once it gets to the
the school itself.
Schoolroom.
I see.
I know as a parent, I certainly buy a lot of cakes and do a lot of car washes with my daughter. They raise that money for a lot of different things, whether it's computers, they do it for their band, they do it for their football team, but you know, that's what parents have to do.
Right. You've been refunding the bonds, and you've been working with Wall Street. How do you network with Wall Street so that you know really this is just a dip? This is a good time to get in.
Well, one of my primary responsibilities is to work with Wall Street and our rating agencies like Moody's, Standard & Poor's, and Fitch that give us a rating, just like a credit rating for an individual. And California used to enjoy the AAA, the best, which meant when we would borrow money, we'd get the best, cheapest rate. And after every year, over the past 4 years, it dropped a notch, a notch, a notch. So we went from a AAA to a AA to a single A. And there's grades in between. The good news is that I have been working with Wall Street, going back to the rating agencies, talking to our institutional investors who buy our paper, and sharing the good news. Our economy today is a lot different than it was 4 years ago. 4 years ago, we were in a recession. Aerospace cutbacks, base closures, and we lost a lot of jobs in our state. Today, according to The Economist, according to UCLA forecast, 1,000 new jobs a day are being created. We've replaced all the recession-lost jobs. Last May, in our budget forecast, we had an extra $1.2 billion show up that was not projected.
Because the revenues were being generated and the taxes?
Revenues are being generated. In fact, it surprised us. It wasn't sales tax revenue that we were collecting that was the surprise. It came from self-reported income tax. It meant that we had, the controller, the governor, economists had used too conservative an estimate on job growth. We have more jobs being created and at a higher wage level. That's good news for California.
Now, I've heard that there were a lot of jobs created, but they were flunky type jobs, that we had been losing executive type and going into flunky. And later, lately,
yes,
it's been more of the upscale type jobs that are being created. Is that true?
Yes, Earl, it's across the board. I think it does our economy a disservice to call service sector jobs kind of hamburger flipper.
Flunky.
And flunky.
That was not a good
Service
word.
sector jobs are, the entertainment community.
But they were at the lower scale on the wages.
These are $60,000, $80,000 a year jobs. Are
that's not bad.
Multimedia. They're higher pay than the aerospace engineers. Now, we have some underemployment. We have a lot of highly skilled master's degree engineers who are aerospace engineers that aren't doing what they were doing before and aren't making the kind of money.
Right.
But the good news is, on an overall level, California as a state, even as a nation state, 7th largest economy in the world.
Say that one more time.
California's economy, if we were to be measured as a country,
yes,
would have a stronger, bigger economy by gross domestic product, bigger than Canada. We have a larger population than Canada. We are, in fact, the 7th largest nation in the world by economic terms. And we have a tremendous breadth and depth in our economy. Californians don't realize that we're the #1 agricultural producing state, not the Midwest, for 45 years in a row. We're the #1 manufacturing state. Even though we've lost manufacturing, we're still #1.
Even though we've lost it in 4 years, we're still number one.
We're still #1. High tech, world leaders. Biotech, world leaders. We're world leaders in entertainment. Now, a new industry, multimedia. I was with Steve Jobs of Pixar recently. And he was telling me about how Toy Story, which is
entirely animated.
Entirely animated. That's our new industry. The garment industry. California overtook New York last year. We are now the #1 designer and manufacturer of garments. So we have Massimo, PCH, BUM. All these California lifestyle manufacturers are here. I just wish my son's 16 years old, and he still wears those big baggy pants. I don't know if you've ever seen them.
Doesn't everybody?
Well, I like them tighten them up a little bit. But anyway, trade and commerce. 3 of the 4 busiest ports in America are right in California. 15% of our economy is directed to trade and investment, international commerce. Within 5 years to 10 years' time, Dr. Mike Boskin up in Hoover said that it'll move up to about 25%. So California is well positioned, I think, in the next 25 years. I think we're at the right time, historically the right place to take advantage of this shift in the economies from being from the Atlantic East Coast to the Pacific Asia West Coast.
I want to invite you back to do a second show dealing with the Pacific Rim and the trade and so forth. And on that point, let's pause for a public service announcement. Stay with us. We'll be right back with Matt Fong, the Treasurer of the State of California. Our guest is Matt Fong. And Matt, you mentioned a couple of things that I wanted to go back and just touch on. You mentioned the State Board of Equalization and their role. They're mainly a, tax collection agency?
They have a variety of roles. They collect the taxes. They also are the administrative judicial function. When I was on the board, we sat and heard appeals from small businessmen and women who were appealing either their franchise taxes or their Board of Equalization assessments.
I've used their quarterly reports of taxable retail sales in California for years as indicators. I used to use them in my forecasting classes at the university, and I found that they do a real service in providing this kind of information. You can help people decide where they want to put their business, what city, whatever. What other services do they provide? Can you think of anything offhand that we haven't touched on?
Believe me, most business people don't want to have anything to do with the Board of Equalization because they collect taxes. So
yeah, right.
But we were of a service when we had the earthquakes, and we had a lot of businesses that were destroyed when fire. I had actually the Board of Equalization and the franchise tax board come in and help reconstruct business records so that we could get emergency aid quicker. I mean, that's kind of something to the side. They're trying to be a little more business friendly. One of the things that I was concerned about is coming from a small business background myself, is that they used to have a requirement, you may recall this, that when you started a business in California, you needed a sales tax license and you needed a bond. I found that only 1% of all the businesses ever defaulted. So I said, why are we making 99% go through this rigmarole? It's expensive. And so we trashed that requirement, and now we have a narrowly defined category. They have to get the bond, but the average person doesn't. It saves a lot of money, a lot of hassle too.
And it also, I think, encourages a lot of people, say, to start their own small business.
Absolutely. You don't want to have a roadblock. The first thing we say, you have an idea, you want to start a business. So we removed those roadblocks. And,
yes. There are enough roadblocks. I remember many years ago I wanted to open an ice cream and candy store, and you would not believe how many licenses and layers of government and things I had to go through. And I ran into a roadblock between the health department and the fire department. The health department said you will put a sink in. The fire department said you will not put a sink in. And I sat there with freezer full of ice cream for 6 weeks waiting for them to resolve that little issue. Mm-hmm. And this is discouraging. Yes. And I think that things are more business friendly now.
Absolutely. They're getting a lot better. I think people in government are recognizing that they get their salaries paid for by taxes. And to have taxes paid, you have to have jobs, and you have to have jobs being created. And it's all tied together.
Now, as Chief Financial Officer, you were telling me the kinds of contacts that you maintain and the travel that you do, the schedule you maintain, and networking, say, with the Wall Street people.
Yes.
Fill us in a little bit more. Let's give us some of the personal background there.
Well, one of the most fascinating things I find in this position, I think being treasurer is not only a great privilege, but personally it's one of the greatest learning positions, because you meet so many interesting people. I mean, sitting on our pension fund board, I sit on 40 boards and commissions, and we invest about $160 billion.
Just to make all those meetings would be something.
They're the largest pension funds in the United States, third largest in the world, and we have Nobel Prize winning economists coming, giving us briefings, and there's a lot you can learn. In fact, we had one Nobel Prize winner, and I said to the person next to me, what did he win his Nobel Prize for? And they said, don't worry about it. 2 years afterwards, they disproved his theory. but he's a brilliant thinker.
Oh, okay.
He's a brilliant thinker. But in Wall Street, you have some of the finest minds who are trying to help figure out how to maximize your return on your investment with lower risk. And I was able to, meeting with some of these, we had problems in Orange County, if you recall, and as soon as I was sworn in as state treasurer, I mean, the Orange County bankruptcy loomed over my shoulder. We had to calm the market. I introduced legislation so that this could happen again, requiring greater disclosure, so that the treasurers couldn't hide things, and required that they mark to market so that people knew the value of these things. And we put oversight boards over the treasurers in their counties. So that I would go back to Wall Street and explain these things so that the market would get more confidence in our state and in our counties and not punish us, or not penalize us. We were pretty successful, I think, when they were telling us they were going to not give us access. For the most counties, they didn't suffer very much pain, if any at all.
No, I don't think they suffered. There were a lot of employees of the county laid off for a while there.
And they're back.
But I don't think that the taxpayer really felt the impact too badly.
We were successful, and counties as far away as San Francisco and Alameda up north were being impacted by Orange County, and so it was important that as a CFO that I explained why the state wasn't bailing out in Orange County. They made mistakes. You don't bail out somebody who made bad mistakes. They were able to solve their problem. There's going to be a lot of pain in Orange County, don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
But the financial market has now given them a clean bill of health, and we're moving ahead.
I would kind of like to turn our attention to the future for California. What do you see? What are the hot areas that we expect to see the most development in?
California is an exciting state.
Always.
And I think that this is the most exciting time for California and her economy. I think the best days are ahead of us. I think it's because we have and always have had in our state entrepreneurs, people who are forward thinkers, who are visionaries. We've gone through now 4 different cycles. My family's been here for 4 generations, and we were first a gold mining state, then we were known as an oil state and a real estate state, and then we became a Defense Department state with a lot of DoD contracts. We are very much entrepreneurs. We keep reinventing ourselves, and this high-tech, biotech, entertainment, multimedia is something that is emerging as our new future, and so that's why foreign countries, foreign companies are all coming into our state to take part of this, to participate.
Well, I think other states across the nation are coming here too.
Absolutely.
I was working with a video production company well, about 3 years ago, and we were doing the ads for the Goto department stores in Tokyo, Japan, and they wanted the models, strictly American kids, on the beach at Dana Point, wearing the latest casual California style. And this was what was hot in Japan.
That's right.
And California sort of epitomizes, I think, the American dream, and the reasons why we see things happening as we do here.
Yes.
But is it because we lead in education that we have this capability of bringing ourselves to the fore again?
Well, I think it's a culture. We certainly have education, and you need education to deal with these, what I call knowledge-based future kind of jobs with computers.
Yes.
But we also have a special atmosphere of creativity here in culture. We have the arts are well represented, with the jazz festivals, the music festivals, the art colonies. We have entertainment. 80% of all programming for TV and movies comes from California. That's a lot of money. 80%.
I didn't realize that much.
In China, the #1 show in China is Baywatch.
Well, that's the #1 all over the world, isn't it? And it's the California beaches is what it is.
What it demonstrates is that as you have a proliferation of more channels, as we're seeing with cable,
yes,
that it helps us because there's a greater demand for writers, greater demand for script people, greater demand for, and they're high, good-paying jobs. So California is well positioned, and then there's something as treasurer I'm trying to focus our attention on, and that is to position in the next 5 to 10 years for California to emerge as the next financial center for America, for the Pacific Rim economy. In other words, to become the New York, as New York was to London.
Yes.
I want California to be in that position for the Asia Pacific financial markets, and to therefore win the investments and get the cash flow and the deal flow coming through California.
You were talking before we started to tape about a over-the-counter, some new development in that regard. Would you share that with us, please?
Well, the Wall Street Journal carried an article recently about how in Europe they're recognizing the need for a new issue market, an over-the-counter market, and how they're starting to put this together over in London. I have been pushing on a similar front that our Pacific Coast Stock Exchange should become and evolve into a Asia Board or Pacific Rim NASDAQ. A lot of Asian companies, family-owned, regional, are going to expand. They need U.S. capital. I don't want them to go to New York or Boston for their capital. I want them to come to California. So my strategy is to have our board expand and make it an Asia board, and so that
sounds exciting.
So that we will do what Chicago did. We're not talking about eliminating Wall Street, by no means.
No.
But Chicago, many decades ago, decided that because they had the commodities flow, they had the train yards, they said, let's have a commodities future exchange. They created it and have that niche today. We have, as London, as New York, as Chicago, we have the commerce. We have more commerce going through California than any other state. We are closer in proximity.
I want to touch on that. You said there were 3 major ports.
Right.
What are they?
Well, you have Long Beach, Los Angeles.
You're combining that as one?
You can combine it as one. Sometimes they split them up.
I was wondering if you were combining those.
But
because
San Diego is in there.
Definitely.
So San Diego, Long Beach, LA, which together is the clear knockdown winner, and then you have Oakland, San Francisco.
Yes.
But we have the commerce flows. We have the trade flows. And we're getting the financial flows. What I want is the high-paying jobs. I want the investment dollars to come through California. We have outstanding financial community from San Diego all up to San Francisco, even further north.
Oh, yes.
So instead of taking our pension dollars and our investment dollars and sending them to New York to be invested, I have been fighting and focusing on getting these dollars flowing through California.
That's exciting. We're going to pause for an announcement. Stay with us. We'll be right back. I have some rather interesting things on housing I want to ask our guest. Welcome back. Our guest is Matt Fong, who is the Treasurer of the State of California. Matt's been sharing with us some of the exciting developments that are going on in our state here. And one of the things, Matt, that you've been fighting for is to get lower cost housing for people.
Yes.
Would you explain what's going on there, please?
One of my 40 commissions that I'm chairman of deals with low-income housing. I monitor and issue tax credits. And there's only a certain amount of money that comes from Washington, D.C. for these affordable housing programs. But we've been wasteful. We've had no control on cost, and we've led the nation in high-cost housing. My goal is not to enrich developers. My goal has been to get more housing to those who need it in the affordable housing community.
Yes.
We fought the developers. We fought many of these cities who had a stranglehold on this money, and I was able to put in cost controls. We've cut costs now by 12% to 17%. That has had the direct impact of lowering rents from $600 to $500 per month. More importantly,
how does a person qualify for this?
They go through their cities. But the important thing, Earl, is that we have been able to now, with the same amount of money, put over 1,000 more families in affordable housing than we were with the same amount of money. That's the success I'm very happy about.
Oh, that is good. How big is the market that you're facing, though? 1,000 families, is that a drop in the bucket, or is that a significant portion?
Any of those 1,000 families, one of those would say that's significant. You know, it's
yeah,
important.
Right. It's a personal thing.
One at a time. So they have more money to spend now for their education, for their children's clothes. They start building up a stake. And I just don't want this money wasted. It was just going into, well, it wasn't getting to the recipient.
I see.
Yeah.
I worked one time with a group called IMPACT, the Improvement Action Council of South Central Los Angeles, and we helped to get the Ujimi Village funded and other things like that, which has been in the news recently. You play an important role in streamlining government expenditures and finding any fat and getting rid of it.
Absolutely. Because the answer isn't raising taxes. The answer is cutting waste in government.
Cutting the costs.
Absolutely. Government's important. I'm not fighting government, but, but wasteful, overlapping, bureaucratic government we haven't needed. And I've been able to, when I was on the Board of Equalization, for example, we were able to consolidate 3 of my 7 offices. First time it's ever been done, into 4 buildings, and we're saving $1 million to $2 million a year just on that alone. And we protect, the jobs are fine. It's just the overhead, the waste, the inefficiencies.
Right.
So just looking for ways to do the same thing better.
So you keep reviewing all the budgets and everything to say, well, how do you justify this, and this isn't necessary, or this is duplicating being something?
Unfortunately, Earl, instead of when I first came on the board in that job, when they determined their budget, by taking the last year's and adding 6%. I said, wait a second, let's start program by program. You justify to me while we're doing it today.
Well, that sounds almost like an old system I was working on once called planning programming budgeting system, PPP. Yeah. Our guest has been Matt Fong. He is the treasurer of the state of California, and he's been telling us a little bit about what's going on in California, and it does sound wonderful and encouraging. Matt, thank you very much for being with us today.
Thank you.
And we thank you for being with us, and please join us soon again for more adventures in life.